I gave up everything to save my family's vineyard. $850,000, my future, my trust. But when the harvest celebration came, they named my younger sister CEO instead. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just betrayal wrapped in polite applause. My name is Jessica. And what they didn't know was, I had a plan, and I wasn't leaving quietly. The barn smelled like ripe grapes and fresh hay, decorated with strings of fairy lights and vintage wine barrels. It should have been the happiest night of my life. Instead, I sat frozen, my wine glass halfway to my lips, as my father's voice boomed across the crowd. Today marks an exciting new chapter in our family's legacy, he said, beaming. We're proud to announce that Andrea, fresh from completing her MBA, will take over as CEO of River's Edge Vineyard. Applause exploded around me. Cheers, whistles, flashbulbs. And there she was, Andrea, floating toward the stage in a designer dress, smiling like a movie star. 6 months ago, there had been no applause. There had only been panic. A foreclosure notice from the bank. Tears from my mother. Desperation in my father's voice. And me, Jessica, transferring my entire life savings, $850,000, into River's Edge's account without a second thought. 3 generations of winemaking were about to be wiped away, and I refused to let that happen. I built my own investment firm from scratch. I knew the value of hard work, of commitment. I didn't need their gratitude. I only wanted the family to survive. But watching Andrea now, standing there with no dirt under her nails, no sunburn on her shoulders, no idea how fermentation curves worked, I realized something gutting. They hadn't just used my money. They had erased me. My mother leaned in, her hand resting lightly on my arm. Jessica, honey, she whispered. I hope you understand. Andrea's degree makes her the natural choice to handle the business side. Natural choice. Of course. I forced a smile, raised my glass high and toasted. To the new CEO of River's Edge. The words tasted like ashes in my mouth. As the celebration roared on, I slipped outside, the cool night air sharp against my skin. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a name I never thought I'd need. Rachel Thompson, the most ruthless corporate attorney I'd ever met at a wine industry conference. I need your help with a family business matter. Are you free tomorrow? Her reply was swift. 10 a.m. Bring everything you have. I tucked my phone back into my clutch and stared out across the vineyard fields. The rows of vines I had helped save, now stretching into the darkness like scars. They thought they had silenced me. They thought loyalty meant obedience. They thought being family would stop me from fighting back. They were wrong. Very, very wrong. And soon they were going to find out exactly how much I had learned, not from textbooks like Andrea, but from the real world where loyalty had terms and betrayal had a price. A price they were about to pay. Rachel Thompson's office towered over downtown Dallas, all gleaming steel and sharp edges, fitting given the kind of work she specialized in. She barely looked up when I entered, already flipping through the bank statements I'd emailed her the night before. Let me get this straight, she said, her voice crisp. You transferred your entire life savings, $850,000, to save the family vineyard. No contracts, no promissory notes. Just trust. I sank into the chair opposite her, feeling smaller by the second. They're my parents. It was supposed to be simple. Rachel set the papers down, folding her hands neatly. Jessica, in my experience, family can be the best con artists. They just don't need to sell you a dream. You're already desperate to believe it. I said nothing. What could I say? They promised you something in return, she asked. I nodded. Dad said I'd have a secured role in the business. Mom cried. Swore they'd make it up to me. I believed them. Rachel leaned back. And now they've handed the vineyard, your vineyard, to your sister. Publicly. In front of witnesses. I clenched my fists. They act like I'm the ungrateful one. Like my investment was just a daughter's duty. Rachel smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only calculation. Perfect, she said. Verbal fraud. Breach of implied contract. Possibly even financial manipulation. She tapped the papers. We start by sending a formal demand letter. Return of your full investment, plus 8% interest accrued over 6 months. Total repayment within 30 days. And if they refuse? I asked, my voice low. She shrugged. Then we escalate. civil lawsuit, financial audits, public scrutiny. Given how sloppy they sound, I wouldn't be surprised if we uncovered misuse of funds along the way. I hesitated, chewing my lip. I don't want to destroy them. Rachel's gaze softened just a fraction. Jessica, they already destroyed something. Your trust. Your future plans. Your financial security. You're not burning down anything. You're just refusing to let them steal from you in peace. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight shift off my chest. Little by little. Rachel picked up her pen. Tell me, what's your ideal outcome? Control of the vineyard. I shook my head without hesitation. No. Let Andrea have her title. I want my money back, all of it. And then I'm going to build something better. A vineyard of my own. Rachel's grin sharpened. Now that's the spirit. She scribbled a few notes, then looked up. I'll have the demand letter ready by the end of the day. By tomorrow morning, River's Edge Vineyard will understand exactly what happens when you stab the wrong person in the back. As I left her office, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Power. And I intended to use every ounce of it. The demand letter hit River's Edge Vineyard like a thunderclap on a clear day. Rachel sent it by certified mail, email, and courier service, making absolutely sure it landed in their hands and on their doorstep at exactly 9 a.m. sharp. By noon, my phone exploded. First came the texts. Andrea, are you insane? You're tearing the family apart. Dad, come home. We need to talk. As a family. Mom. Sweetheart, we can work this out without lawyers, can't we? Please call me. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I poured a glass of Merlot, my own bottle, not River's Edge, and waited. The real call came an hour later. Andrea's number flashed on the screen, and out of pure curiosity I answered. The second I picked up, she was screaming. A lawsuit? Are you out of your mind? You're going to destroy everything Grandpa built. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof because of you. I kept my voice calm. The solution is simple, Andrea. Return my $850,000 with 8% interest. 30 days. No drama. You're being ridiculous, she shrieked. That money saved your inheritance too. You should be grateful. I almost laughed. Funny. I thought gratitude would look less like stealing and more like honoring promises. She lowered her voice, attempting faux sweetness. You do realize verbal agreements are complicated, right? You have no proof. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Actually, I do. Remember Michael, the accountant? The one you always ignored? He was there when Dad promised me a role in exchange for the investment. And he's already given a sworn statement. Silence. Then muffled voices on her end. Frantic, panicked. Andrea's voice faded, replaced by Dad's rough tone. Jessica, he said, his voice strained. Think about what you're doing. You'll destroy our family's name. Everything we've built. I leaned back in my chair. Funny, I said again. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you destroyed it the moment you decided my life savings were just another family donation. He switched tactics instantly, his voice softening. We can't repay that amount immediately, sweetheart. The vineyard doesn't have that kind of liquidity. I pretended to think it over for half a second. Then you might want to talk to a bank. Or sell a few assets. Like, say, Andrea's new Mercedes. Tuscany trips don't pay for themselves, Dad. His voice hardened. If you love this family, you'll back off. I hung up. No more guilt. No more manipulation. They wanted to play hardball? Fine. I didn't come this far to fold. As I closed the call, another text came through, this time from Michael. I found something in the books you'll want to see. Urgent. Meet? My heart thudded with a mix of dread and anticipation. If what Michael hinted at was true, the real battle for River's Edge hadn't even begun yet. And I was ready. Michael looked like he hadn't slept in days when he slid into the booth across from me at the tiny cafe on Maple Street. He carried a thick folder tucked under one arm and kept glancing nervously over his shoulder. You're going to want to sit down for this, he said, even though I was already sitting. Without a word, he pushed the folder across the table. I opened it slowly, scanning the highlighted documents inside, and felt my stomach twist. My $850,000 hadn't just saved the vineyard. It had funded A brand new Mercedes SUV registered under business transportation. A market research trip to Tuscany, complete with first-class tickets and luxury hotel stays. Tuition payments backdated under employee development, aka Andrea's MBA. And worst of all, 2 weeks before the family announced Andrea as CEO, they registered a new LLC, River's Edge Holdings LLC. Michael tapped the papers grimly. They've been moving the Vineyard's assets, land titles, equipment, even the wine inventory, into the new company. Quietly. Systematically. I stared at him, ice crawling up my spine. You're telling me they're gutting the original Vineyard? The one I invested in? He nodded. The company you saved will be an empty shell by the end of the year. No assets. No profits. Nothing left for you to claim, legally or otherwise. It hit me like a gut punch. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated financial murder. Michael leaned closer. Your lawyer needs to see this immediately. But you didn't get it from me. I'm already looking for another job. I can't afford to be dragged into a fraud investigation. I nodded, too numb to speak, and tucked the folder into my bag. Rachel would know exactly what to do with this. Just as I stood to leave, my phone buzzed. A text from Andrea. Family meeting tonight. Don't bring your lawyer. Last chance to fix this like family. I showed Michael. He shook his head. They're going to try to manipulate you, guilt you, maybe even threaten you. I smiled coldly. They're welcome to try. As I walked out of the cafe, the Texas sun glaring down on me, I felt something strange bubbling up inside. Not sadness. Not regret. Resolve. They had made a mistake underestimating me. They thought I was still the girl desperate for their approval. The girl who'd wire $850,000 based on a promise and a tearful voice over the phone. But that girl was gone. Burned away, like dry leaves in a harvest fire. What stood now was something different. Something they couldn't manipulate. Something they couldn't control. Something ready to burn their carefully built lies to the ground and build something better from the ashes. I didn't show up to the family meeting alone. Rachel came with me, standing just outside the Vineyard's main house with her arms crossed, her presence silent but undeniable. If my family thought I was going to walk in blind again, they clearly hadn't learned anything. Inside, the tension was thick enough to bottle and sell. Andrea perched stiffly on the couch, her manicured nails tapping a furious rhythm against her wine glass. Dad stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, looking every bit the patriarch trying to hold a crumbling empire together. Mom twisted a tissue between her hands, her eyes red and puffy, the image of manufactured heartbreak. You didn't have to bring a lawyer, Mom said, voice trembling. I'm not here as your daughter tonight, I said evenly. I'm here as the investor you defrauded. Dad's jaw tightened. Andrea scoffed under her breath. We're family, Jessica, he said. We can solve this privately. No, I replied calmly. Family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't hide asset transfers. Family doesn't steal life savings to fund Italian vacations. I set Michael's folder on the coffee table with a sharp thump. The color drained from Mom's face. Andrea froze mid-sip. Dad's mouth opened, then snapped shut. This, I said, tapping the folder, is evidence of fraudulent financial behavior, asset concealment, and misuse of investor funds. Shall we go through it item by item? Andrea's voice wobbled. You're bluffing. Rachel stepped forward, her tone clipped and lethal. We're not. In fact, the SEC will have copies by Monday unless full repayment, plus interest, is wired to my client within 48 hours. Dad's mask slipped first, his face twisted in rage. You would destroy your sister's future over money, he barked. I didn't flinch. You destroyed mine over greed. Don't confuse the two. Mom jumped in, her voice syrupy sweet. We can't get that much money in 2 days, sweetheart. Be reasonable. Be creative, I said coldly. Mortgage the house. Sell Andrea's car. Hold a bake sale. I don't care. 48 hours. Tick-tock. Andrea leapt up, furious. You're just jealous. You always have been. That's why you can't stand that I'm the CEO. I smiled thinly. Congratulations on the title. Shame you'll be presiding over an empty company once the SEC starts digging. Rachel handed Dad a printed copy of the amended demand letter. "This is your only chance," she said. "Otherwise we escalate legally, publicly, and permanently." As I turned to leave, Mom called after me, voice breaking. "Jessica, you're breaking this family apart." I stopped in the doorway, turning back just long enough to say, "No. You broke it the moment you chose betrayal over blood." The door clicked shut behind me, and with it any last trace of guilt I might have carried. Outside, Rachel smiled grimly. "They're scrambling already," she said, checking her phone. "Desperate people make messy mistakes. Let's be ready." I nodded. The clock was ticking. And for once, I was the one setting the terms. The next 24 hours were a storm. Rachel forwarded me updates almost hourly. 3 different banks had declined River's Edge's emergency loan applications. Their accountant, Michael, reported frantic meetings behind closed doors. A real estate agent friend tipped us off that the family had quietly listed 2 pieces of Vineyard land at fire sale prices, hoping for fast cash. Desperation had a scent, and it was thick in the air. By evening, Andrea's messages had shifted from threats to pleading. "You're ruining everything. Dad's health is worse. Think about what Grandpa would say." Funny. I thought Grandpa would say, "Protect what you build. Don't hand it to people who don't deserve it." I ignored her. Instead, I finalized my offer on Marshall Creek, the rival vineyard just across the valley. Perfect soil, premium sun exposure, and a breathtaking view straight into River's Edge. A view they'd be forced to see every single day. Late that night, Dad showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking 10 years older, a thick envelope clutched in his hands. "We've pulled together $600,000, he said without preamble, his voice ragged. "That's all we can manage." I didn't invite him in. "That's not the deal," I said, standing in the doorway. $850, 000 plus interest. All of it. "You'll bankrupt us," he shouted, his face reddening. "You'll ruin your sister's career." I met his fury with silence. He tried a different tactic. Voice low, almost begging. "We made mistakes, Jessica. But you're punishing the whole family for it. What about the workers? The families who depend on River's Edge?" For a moment, guilt stirred. But then I remembered the documents. The lies. The deliberate gutting of the company to lock me out. I kept my voice cold. "You should have thought of that before you stole from me." Dad's hands tightened around the envelope. "You're not the girl we raised," he said bitterly. "No," I agreed. "I'm better." He left without another word, shoulders slumped in defeat. I closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Across the room, my phone buzzed. "Rachel." Final warning delivered. 12 hours left. "They're scrambling. SEC paperwork is ready to file if needed." Perfect. I poured a glass of wine, a bottle I had picked, paid for, and poured without anyone else's permission. Tomorrow would decide everything. Either they would wire the full repayment, or River's Edge would fall. And Andrea's shiny CEO title wouldn't be worth the paper it was printed on. The girl they thought they could buy off with hollow titles and empty promises was gone. What remained? A woman ready to build her own empire. And if they stood in my way, I'd build it on the ruins of theirs. At exactly 8:32 a.m. my phone buzzed. An email from First Regional Bank. Subject line, transfer confirmation. Attached was everything I needed. Proof of $850,000 wired to my account. Plus 6 months of 8% interest. Signed documentation confirming full settlement. They caved. I stood there in my apartment, staring at the screen as the sun poured in through the windows. It was over. No courtroom drama. No media frenzy. Just a quiet, devastating victory. Within minutes, Rachel called, her voice crisp with satisfaction. "They signed a financing deal with the bank late last night," she said. "Full oversight. 2 board seats surrendered. 5 years of mandatory audits. River's Edge would survive, but under a microscope. No more luxury trips on company funds. No more shady asset transfers. Andrea would still have her CEO title, but no real power." I smiled. "Perfect. And Marshall Creek?" Rachel asked. "Signed the papers an hour ago," I said. "The vineyard's mine." She laughed. "You didn't just win, Jessica. You leveled up." That afternoon, I drove out to Marshall Creek. The land was everything I remembered from childhood visits. Rich dark soil, gentle westward slopes, endless rows of neglected vines waiting for a second chance. Like me, I stood at the highest ridge and looked across the valley. There, barely visible beyond the hills, sat River's Edge Vineyard. My past, my heartbreak, and now, my competition. And I felt nothing but peace. Sunset Valley Vineyard, that's what I would call it. Because this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Over the next few months, everything moved fast. I hired Michael as my CFO the day after he quit River's Edge. I secured a group of small investors who believed in my vision. Focus on quality, not status. I planted new vines, blending tradition with innovation. Meanwhile, Andrea floundered under the bank's strict oversight. Her flashy proposals were rejected. Her budget slashed. Her social media photo ops dwindled into silence. Mom still sent texts every few weeks. "We miss you. Family should forgive. Come home." I never answered. 'Cause I was home. One crisp autumn morning, a package arrived. Inside was Grandpa's old vineyard notebook, filled with decades of handwritten notes. Soil composition charts, grape varietal experiments, weather patterns recorded by hand. Tucked inside was a simple note from Dad. "This belongs with someone who understands its value. Dad." No apologies. No excuses. Just acknowledgement. It wasn't enough to rebuild the bridge between us. But it was enough to close the chapter cleanly. I slipped Grandpa's notebook into my jacket pocket, walked out into the fields, and stood among the first baby vines of Sunset Valley Vineyard. Around me the wind stirred, carrying the sense of promise, hard work, and new beginnings. Not born from inheritance. Not from stolen titles. But from choice. From grit. From me. The girl who had once saved a vineyard had become the woman who built her own. And as the sun dipped low over the hills, I smiled, knowing my legacy was just getting started.